Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're zooming right in on a single day, June 18th, 1815, a date that basically decided the fate of Europe for a century. We're talking Napoleon's last stand, his final gamble, Waterloo. Let's get into it.
Yeah, and gamble is the right word. The stakes.
Yeah.
Well, they were almost unimaginable. Europe thought it was done with Napoleon just a year before. He's exiled on Elba. Problem solved, right?
Collective sigh of relief.
Exactly. And then suddenly, boom, he's back. It sends shockwaves everywhere. So our job today, really, is to dig into why it ended the way it did on that specific day. Not just the troop movements, but the variables. The weather, the generals, the timing. Especially the timing.
And that return itself, the lead-up, is just incredible. The 100 days. He escapes Elba, lands in France in March 1815, and just marches back to Paris. The soldiers sent to stop him, they end up joining him, shouting, "Vive l'Empereur!" No shots fired. How does that even happen?
It tells you a lot of the army's loyalty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Versus loyalty to the restored Bourbon monarchy.
Yeah.
It was fragile.
So a bloodless return, but not exactly peaceful for the rest of Europe.
Not at all. Britain, Prussia, Austria, Russia. They immediately went, okay, that's it. Declared him an outlaw, basically. Not even a legitimate ruler to negotiate with.
So Napoleon knows the clock is ticking. He's got this huge coalition forming against him.
He can't possibly wait for them all to arrive. His only chance, his only play, is to hit hard and fast. Strike first.
Into Belgium, right. Try and split the nearest armies.
Precisely. Wedge himself between Wellington's Allied army and Blücher's Prussians, beat one, then quickly turn and smash the other before they could join forces. Classic Napoleon, really. Divide and conquer. But everything depended on speed.
Okay, so let's talk about who he was facing. Two very different commanders.
Oh, completely different styles. You go Wellington, Arthur Wellesley, Iron Duke. Cool, cautious, a master of picking his ground and fighting defensively. Just brilliant at frustrating attackers.
Okay. And the other?
Field Marshal Blücher. Prussian. Nicknamed Marshal Forwards, Marshal Forward. 70-something years old, but fiery, aggressive, maybe even a bit reckless. Hated Napoleon with a passion, but absolutely determined.
So Napoleon's plan is beat Blücher first, then Wellington. But Blücher sounds like the kind of guy who wouldn't stay beaten easily. Wasn't that a huge risk? Betting everything on knocking him out quickly?
That's the crux of it, isn't it? Napoleon was confident, maybe overconfident. He did beat Blücher tactically at Ligny 2 days before Waterloo.
Right.
But he didn't destroy the Prussian army. And he underestimated Wellington, famously calling him a sepoy general. More importantly, he just didn't grasp Blücher's sheer will. Blücher was hurt, yeah, but he retreated towards Wellington, not away. He was absolutely fixated on linking up. That was a critical miscalculation by Napoleon.
Okay, so that sets the stage for the 18th, the actual battlefield. Describe the setup for us.
Wellington chose a defensive position south of Waterloo Village. It wasn't amazing terrain, but he knew how to use it. He positioned his main force behind a long, low ridge.
It's sort of hidden from direct view.
Partially, yes, using the reverse slope tactic he favored. But critically, the main road Napoleon needed, the road to Brussels, ran through his position. And flanking that road were two strong points. Stone farm complexes. Hougoumont on Wellington's right, La Haye-Sainte closer to the center.
Farms, why were they so important? Just buildings, right?
Much more than that. Think of them as mini fortresses, natural strong points. Wellington packed them with crack troops. They anchored his whole line.
Ah, okay.
It meant Napoleon couldn't just easily sweep around Wellington's flanks. He had to attack the center, right between these fortified farms. They channeled the French assault.
And then the weather throws a massive wrench in the works. The mud.
Oh, the mud. You can't talk about Waterloo without talking about the mud. It rained torrentially the night before, just poured.
Turning the fields into, what, a swamp?
Pretty much. Heavy, sticky Belgian mud. And this was absolutely crucial because Napoleon relied heavily on his artillery, his grand battery.
Right, to soften up the enemy lines before the infantry assault.
Exactly. But he couldn't easily move the heavy cannons across this soaked, muddy ground. They'd just sink. And even when they fired, the wet earth just absorbed a lot of the cannonball impact. Less bounce, less deadly effect.
So what did he do?
He delayed the start of the battle. He waited. Instead of attacking at dawn like 6 or 7 a.m., he held off until around 11:30 a.m., hoping the ground would dry out just enough for his guns and, importantly, his cavalry to operate effectively.
A few hours delay? Seems reasonable, maybe. What was the real cost of waiting?
The real cost, potentially the entire battle. It gave Blücher's Prussians those vital extra hours. They were marching hard after Ligny, trying to reach Wellington. That delay meant they weren't arriving exhausted late in the day. It allowed them to get closer, rest a bit, and be ready to intervene much earlier than Napoleon anticipated. Around 4 p.m., they start showing up.
Wow, so Napoleon, the master of the lightning campaign, gets bogged down by rain.
Literally. It shows perhaps a lack of flexibility in his planning. No contingency for bad weather, which seems odd. But those hours were gold for the Prussians.
Okay, so midday finally arrives, the attack begins. And the first major action is at Hougoumont, that farm on the right.
Yes. Napoleon ordered a large attack there, probably intended as a diversion to draw Wellington's reserves away from the center, where he planned the main blow.
Make Wellington think the main attack was coming there?
Exactly. But it became a battle within the battle. The French just kept feeding troops into the fight for Hougoumont all day. The Allied defense, British Guards mostly, was incredibly stubborn. It sucked in thousands of French soldiers for hours, a huge drain on resources.
Wellington supposedly said something about the gates of Hougoumont being key.
He did. The success of the battle turned upon the closing of the gates at Hougoumont. There was a moment where some French troops actually broke into the courtyard, fierce hand-to-hand fighting. A few guardsmen managed to physically slam the big gate shut again. If they hadn't, well, the French might have rolled up Wellington's flank right there. Huge moment.
Okay, so Hougoumont holds. Meanwhile, the main French attack goes in against Wellington's center, led by Marshal Ney.
Correct. Marshal Ney. Brave as a lion, but impulsive, he launched massive infantry attacks against the ridge. Then, seeing some Allied movement, maybe troops pulling back from artillery fire, he seems to have thought Wellington Center was breaking.
He thought he saw an opportunity.
He did, and he made a fateful decision. He launched the French heavy cavalry, thousands of them, the famous cuirassiers in their breastplates, wave after wave thundering up the slope.
Without infantry support. Isn't that generally a bad idea?
Generally a terrible idea, yes. It seems Ney acted on impulse. Maybe panic, maybe overconfidence in the cavalry shock value. Cavalry can break infantry, but they can't hold ground. They needed infantry right behind them to secure any breakthrough. He sent them in alone.
And Wellington was ready. What did the British do?
The classic defense against cavalry. The square formation. The Allied infantry rapidly formed into these tightly packed, hollow squares, bayonets bristling outwards, like hedgehogs made of men and steel.
So the cavalry just couldn't break in.
They couldn't. Imagine these waves of horsemen surging around the squares, trying to find a weak spot, taking fire from all sides. They charged again and again. Mill around, shot at, withdraw, reform, charge again. It was magnificent, but utterly futile. And the cost.
Devastating for the French cavalry.
Absolutely crippling. These were elite, expensive troops. They were basically spent as a major offensive force by mid-afternoon. A huge blunder by Ney.
Still, despite that failure, the battle wasn't over. You said La Haye-Saint, the other farm, eventually fell.
It did, yes, later in the afternoon. The German defenders there fought incredibly bravely, but critically they ran out of rifle ammunition. Right. A logistical failure on the Allied side this time. The French finally stormed the farmhouse.
And that created a real problem for Wellington.
A massive problem. La Haye-Saint was right in the center of his line. Its fall opened a dangerous gap. French infantry and artillery could now get right up onto the ridge crest, firing directly into the Allied center. For a while there, it really hung in the balance. Wellington's line was genuinely close to breaking, if Napoleon had fresh reserves to throw in right then.
But he didn't have them readily available. Why not?
Because just as La Haye-Saint was falling, something else was happening on Napoleon's right flank.
The Prussians.
The Prussians. Blücher's lead units started arriving on the battlefield. Remember those hours Napoleon lost in the morning? This is when it paid off for the Allies. They didn't just arrive, they immediately attacked the French flank near the village of Plancenoit.
So Napoleon suddenly has to fight in two directions.
Exactly. He's got Wellington grinding him down in front, and now Blücher hitting his side, threatening his rear. He was forced to divert troops, including units of his precious guard, just to hold off the Prussians. Savage fighting erupted in Plancenoit village. His army was being stretched desperately thin.
Okay, the situation looks dire for Napoleon. What's his last move? His final throw of the dice?
He plays his ultimate trump card. The Imperial Guard. His elite veterans, never defeated in pitched battle, his final reserve. As dusk started to fall, he committed them to one last, massive assault straight up the ridge towards Wellington Center, hoping for that breakthrough before the Prussians could completely collapse his flank.
This is the iconic moment, right? The bearskin hats, the drums.
Absolutely. The atmosphere must have been electric. The Guard advances in perfect order, legends marching into the smoke, but they're marching over ground littered with the dead and wounded from earlier attacks.
Yeah.
And Wellington had one more surprise.
What was that?
He'd kept some of his best troops, his own British Guards regiments, lying down on the reverse slope, hidden from the French artillery and the advancing Imperial Guard.
So the French Guard didn't see them until the last minute.
Pretty much. As the Imperial Guard reached the crest of the ridge, Wellington supposedly gave the order.
Up, guards, and at them.
That's the one. His guards stood up, leveled their muskets, and delivered devastating volleys at point-blank range right into the face of the advancing French column. The shock was immense.
And then
Yeah.
the unthinkable happened.
The unthinkable. The Imperial Guard, the invincible legends,
Yeah.
they faltered, they stopped, and then they started to fall back. They broke. And that sight, the Guard retreating, a cry went up that echoed across the entire French army. La Garde recule.
The Guard is retreating.
Exactly. And the psychological impact was instantaneous, catastrophic.
If the Guard is running, what hope is there for anyone else?
Precisely. It wasn't just a retreat, it was the signal for a total collapse. Panic spread like wildfire. What was left of the French army just disintegrating.
Yep.
Combined with the relentless Prussian pressure on the flank and rear, it turned into a complete rout, a mad scramble to escape the battlefield as night fell.
And Napoleon, he barely escaped himself, fled back to Paris. His authority just evaporated. He abdicated again a few days later. This time, the Allies weren't taking any chances. No nearby Elba.
Nope. They shipped him off to St. Helena, a tiny, remote island in the middle of the South Atlantic, thousands of miles from anywhere, where he died 6 years later.
So Waterloo, it wasn't just a battle, it was the end of an era.
Absolutely. The final, definitive end to almost 25 years of the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars that had convulsed Europe. It cemented British dominance for the next century, made Wellington a legend, and gave Blücher his ultimate revenge.
We've talked strategy, tactics, generals, mud, the Guard.
But what's really striking, isn't it, is how much hinged on that initial delay. Napoleon's plan needed everything to go perfectly, especially the timing. And a night of heavy rain completely derailed it.
Those few hours waiting for the ground to dry.
They bought Blücher just enough time, 5 hours delay maybe, gave the Prussians the window they needed to cover those last miles and arrive not just on the battlefield, but in time to decisively intervene.
So thinking about this for you, our listeners.
Yeah, it really drives home the role of contingency in history, doesn't it? We look for big reasons, genius plans, fatal flaws.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's the unexpected variable, the thing nobody could really control, like the weather.
A night of rain changing the course of European history.
It makes you wonder, right? What other pivotal moments, maybe moments that shape the world we live in now, turned on something seemingly small? A logistical hiccup, an unexpected storm, a message arriving just a little too late, or just in time. Something to think about.